What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Laughing Man Network's Fantasycast. It's week 9. Today we're going to talk about the injuries from week 8, and we're going to talk about the waivers going into week 9. We're going to do a bit of a shorter one today. Look forward to the next episode where I'm going to add a segment where we're going to talk about players that you need to go target to finish your season strong, to get into the playoffs, try for a championship, guys that may be under the radar, guys that may be high profile, but they're not performing or they're injured. But we're going to come up with a good little list. So tune in for that towards the end of the week. But for now, let's get into the week 8 injury report. Coming out of week 8, we don't have as many injuries as we did in some of the past weeks. Major ones we're going to look at right now. We're looking at Cooper Kupp. Unfortunately, he went out with an ankle injury. I believe it was late third quarter maybe. He's day-to-day. I don't know if he's going to play this week. Maybe he gives it a go. Who knows? DK Metcalf, we thought he was going to be out a few weeks, and he played this week and had a big week. So follow Kupp. See what's going on with the ankle before, game time. If he doesn't practice Thursday and Friday, don't expect him to have a big impact. They don't want to get a player like that hurt long-term. So keep an eye on him and make sure he gets a few practices in before he plays. A.J. Dillon looked like he got kind of a knee injury, got rolled on a little bit. He came back into the game, though. Didn't sound like anything happened after the game that made it worse than it was. So you should be all right with A.J. Dillon for now. Mark Ingram, looks like we have a sprain MCL. Look for him to miss a few weeks. He wasn't much of an impact anyway, unless you were in like a 16-team, 18-team league or something. But that won't have much impact on you on fantasy. Devontae Parker is another MCL sprain. Expect him to miss a couple weeks. Again, you may have had him flexing him in your deep 12-team, 14-team, 16-team leagues. You may have had to plug him in here and there, but he shouldn't have too much implication on your season. Christian Watson, again, not much on your season. You probably shouldn't have been playing him. He got a concussion. Hopefully it wasn't serious and he can get back to work, next week after. Ramondre Stevenson, I saw something that maybe he got rolled up a little bit, but I haven't seen any more reports coming out saying that it was anything serious. But keep an eye on it. Damian Harris is coming off an injury too, but Stevenson is looking like the lead back in New England. So just keep an eye on that. If you have Damian Harris, keep an eye on the situation. If you don't have Damian Harris, try and go trade for Damian Harris just in case something does happen towards the end of the season, because Stevenson's the clear number 1 now, and Damian Harris might as well be his handcuff. So let's get into the Week 9 waiver wire. We're getting deep. You got injuries happening, concussions. You have people that might be getting traded, missing weeks, bye weeks. It's time to grab some of these guys to plug in your roster. Or maybe you have some studs that you need to insure down the line. A lot of these guys we're going to talk about in waivers today are guys that I've talked about earlier in the season that you should be getting as handcuffs. You should be keeping an eye on. You should be getting to back up your players if you have a deeper bench. So let's get into them, guys. Usually I talk about quarterbacks. We're going to kind of skip quarterbacks. At this point in Superflex leagues, with all the buys, the injuries, all the quarterbacks should pretty much be owned at this point. If not, some of the lesser-owned ones that are doing well right now, you have Heineke, P.J. Walker, Andy Dalton. If those guys aren't owned, make sure they're owned, especially if you're a team that doesn't have 2 rock-solid quarterbacks in your Superflex. These guys can fill in on a bye week or if somebody goes down, and I think they can do pretty well for you. All 3 of these guys had pretty decent weeks this week. But moving into running backs, of course, off the top, the guys you need to ensure your studs. Alexander Madison, I think he's somewhere around like 60% owned. He should be owned. Make sure he's not on waivers. If he is, especially Dalvin Cook owners, go grab Madison, throw him in the bottom of your bench. If you have a winning team and you have somebody that you can cut that you're just not contributing, throw him on the bottom. They could be a league winner. You never know. We're getting down to the end of the season. Dalvin Cook's already been hurt once. So go get Madison. Hold him on the bottom of your roster if you can. Jamal Williams. Again, he was starting for a few weeks, so he should be owned, especially Swift owners. Go own Jamal Williams. He's getting used anyway. spend a little bit on him because he's worth it to flex as is. But if there is an injury to Swift again towards the end of the season, Jamal Williams will be a running back one. So make sure Jamal Williams is owned. He's 60 to 70% owned. Maybe in a 10-team league, he's available. Go get him, stash him on the bottom of your bench, especially on a winning team, and have that guy later for the playoffs potentially. Next up, a guy I've said before that you should go get, Rachaad White, especially for net owners. He's 48% owned now, which means he's owned in most leagues, especially 14, 12-team leagues. But he's getting about 8 to 10 opportunities per game. He was an elite pass-catching running back in college. If Fournette goes down and misses some games, which he's been lucky enough not to yet, Rachaad White is going to be a huge pickup. You're probably looking at top-end running back 2, bottom running back 1 numbers, potentially, if he gets the start. So make sure you have Rachaad White, especially 6 games away from the playoffs. Something could happen any week. They could give somebody, a week rest for twisting an ankle just a little bit instead of playing him. Rachaad White would be a great fill-in. Go get him. Kyren Williams, Notre Dame running back. He's been on IR. He's 29% owned. He's set to come back in week 9. Go grab him if he's available, especially, like I said, on a winning team. You've had Akers. Henderson hasn't been impressive. They've got Ronnie Rivers, not super impressive. Go get Kyren Williams. There was a lot of hype around him coming into the season around the Los Angeles Rams camp. Go grab him. They're going to need a spark. I've heard rumors of maybe getting a trade done with David Montgomery going to LA, but I don't know if that gets done by the time, this video gets out or by the time the trade deadline happens, whatever's first. So go get Kyren Williams. Hope for the best. He could win you a game or 2 down the stretch, especially Darrell Henderson. He always seems to get banged up. So expect him to get a few opportunities this season. Moving on to guys that you can put into your roster now at running back. Kenyon Drake, 39% owned. He's playing about 58% of snaps, which isn't great. He's splitting the carries with Gus Edwards and what's his name? Justice Hill, the guy that never was. But Kenyon Drake this week, he got 11 touches. He got a touchdown, 16.5 points. That's great for a flex. I'm willing to play Kenyon Drake as long as J.K. Dobbins isn't in there. Maybe if they can start limiting Justice Hill a little more, just play Gus. Maybe give Kenyon Drake the passing work. I'd much rather see that. But Kenyon Drake could be a fill-in flex, especially with bye weeks down the stretch. If you want to spend a little bit and you're really weak at running back, go ahead, get Kenyon Drake, but don't go out of your way to grab him. Latavius Murray, this dude is ageless. I think he's 32 years old. He's 46% owned at the moment. He's got 10 points and 12 points through 2 games with Denver. He got 16 opportunities this past week on 44% of snaps. That's great usage. He can be used in the passing game. He's got good hands. He's a clear 1A, 1B with Melvin Gordon. It's not an impressive backfield, but Latavius Murray just finds ways to get it done. If you need a flex, you need a fill-in running back 1 week, he can get you 10, 12 points. If he scores a touchdown, even better. So I'm okay with going to get Latavius Murray. Don't spend too much, but 46% owned, which means anything after a 12-team, chances are he is owned. But go out there, give it a shot, especially if you're weak at running back. Moving into wide receivers, top one is going to be Rondale Moore. He's 50% owned. Most leagues have probably been picking him up and dropping him over the weeks. He's averaging 95% of snaps. 3 out of the past 4 games, he's got 8 targets, 10 targets, 8 targets. That's good usage. Marquise Brown is going to come back, so those targets may come down. But Rondale Moore kind of has a unique role. They make plays for him. DeAndre Hopkins has taken all the best coverage, and he's even exploiting the coverage. Look for Rondale Moore to have some games where you can flex him, you can get some points out of him. He's going to be very boom or bust, but some weeks that's better than nothing. So if you need upside, you have a lot of bye weeks, Rondale Moore can give it to you. he can come out and give you a 20, 30-point week. Next up, another Arizona Cardinal. We have Robbie Anderson. We've been saying cut him all season. Now he's a Cardinal. 21% owned. New team. Let's wait and see what the usage is going to be before you start him. But if you have room in the bottom of your roster and you just have somebody that's just not worth a damn, even if it's like a J.D. McKissick or something like that, I'd be willing to take a chance on the upside of Robbie Anderson. Maybe he kind of takes the Hollywood role a little bit, but DeAndre Hopkins is the lead dog. Rondell Moore is going to get some targets. So don't spend too much. If you want to get Robbie Anderson, take a chance. Go for it. Ben Skoranek. I've said earlier in the season, keep an eye on him. You get him to back up Kupp. Handcuff your wide receiver. That's not something you normally hear of. But I said, go get Ben Skoranek. I think he's going to have an opportunity in this offense if Kupp goes down. He was getting some targets already, but now that Kupp's down, you're looking at a decent wide receiver, especially in PPR. So go get Skoranek. He can play all over the field. He can play all the positions, Kupp was playing. He's not going to be as good, but I think he's going to be better than Allen Robinson. So especially Kupp owners, go get Skoranek. He's 9.4% owned. Go get him. He could win you a playoff game down the stretch too, especially if Kupp ends up re-injuring something later down the line. So handcuff your top wide receiver. Next up, Julio Jones. A lot of people dropped him. A lot of people owned him. He was 70, 80% owned at one point. But at the moment, he's 31% owned. He had 4 targets this past weekend and a touchdown. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with being Tom Brady's third wide receiver. Julio Jones, if he can stay healthy, he may be able to help you down the stretch, especially in flex. He has huge upside. Remember, I said Antonio Brown, when Antonio Brown was healthy and playing and not going crazy, he was the wide receiver 5 on a points per game basis as the third wide receiver for Tom Brady. So if Julio's healthy, you want to own him, have him at the bottom of your roster, and hope he can keep it together for the season because he could win you a playoff game. Jaylen Warren, I didn't bring him up with the running backs up top, but he should be owned, especially Najee Harris owners. Jaylen Warren had 10 points this past week, but he's only averaging 25% of snaps at the moment. He's getting the most out of his snaps. But Najee Harris is the lead dog still, but he's been very ineffective. If something happens to Najee Harris or they shut him down because maybe he's been dealing with a small injury, if they shut him down and they give Jaylen Warren the rock, Jaylen Warren could win you your fantasy league. So keep an eye on him. These are all guys that you probably shouldn't spend much on unless you just have the room and you want to have them on your roster. But these are all guys that if you own the lead in that position for that team, you want to get these guys as the handcuff. So go get Jaylen Warren, go get Skoranek, go get Kyron, Rashad, Latavius. Go get these guys that may end up getting full-time touches. Tight ends. We're going to look at Dulcich. Dulcich should have been getting picked up the past 2 weeks. He has 12 points, 10 points, and 12 points the past 3 weeks. 46% owned. Make sure he is owned. Make sure he is owned. Even if you don't need a tight end, if you have a big name tight end, but you have room on your bench, go get Dulcich, put him there, find a trade. Somebody's going to need a tight end to finish the season. So go get him. Go get him now if he's not already owned. Isaiah Likely, especially Mark Andrews owners. This guy is 6% owned. He had 19 points. He had 6 of 7 targets for 77 yards and a touchdown. Isaiah Likely is a premier athlete at the position. He's still kind of raw. Andrews may or may not miss a few weeks. We're going to keep an eye on that. But Isaiah Likely needs to be owned, especially Mark Andrews owners. He could end up saving you a few games, could end up saving your season if there's a continuous issue with Mark Andrews. So go own him. Last tight end, I've been saying him in my starts for the past several weeks. Evan Ingram. I traded for Evan Ingram, but he's 48% owned. He's a tight end 10. He's had 12 points a game for the past 5 weeks. Evan Ingram has carved himself out a role in this Jacksonville offense, and it looks like it's going to be pretty consistent. He's getting some consistent targets in the offense, which is great for a tight end. When their targets are up and down, that's usually when you don't want them too much, like your Dawson Knoxes and such. So go get Evan Ingram, especially with, like I said, with the bye weeks coming up. If you have Waller, you have one of these other guys who are dealing with injuries in and out. If you end up having to play Conklin, Irv Smith, I'd rather play Evan Ingram. So go get him. You probably won't have to spend anything. Tight end, he's not one of those guys people go after. So go grab him off your waivers if he's still available. So that's going to do it for today's video, guys. We went over waivers. We went over the injury report for Week 8. Tune in next time. We're going to talk about sits and starts, and I'm going to have a list of guys that you should target on your team to make your team have a better chance to make the playoffs and or win the championship. So tune in for that, guys. We're going to come up with some good names. If you have any waiver questions, any sit-start questions, trade questions, you can hit me up, laughingmanfb@gmail.com, or let us know in the comments. If you want to roast my terrible setup behind me, let me know in the comments. If you have any way that I can improve the show, let me know in the comments. So, until next time, guys, good luck on waivers. See ya.